How you guys doing? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and
Here
clear.
you.
We
Hey, how
got
are you?
a new guest joining us, Sean Barrows. He's gonna join the table with us. How's everybody? How y'all doing?
Hey,
Hey, John.
Good to see you all. So I guess we're kicking off this roundtable talking about incentives and SDRs. And Andrew's a good topic for you. Yeah, there you go. This is Campbell.
Yeah, it's right here. Good to meet you guys. Hi, how are you?
hi. Good, good. How are you guys?
Doing
How's
good.
the
I'm
party?
enjoying this ambient background music. Is that,
Right?
is
Yeah.
that from the lobby?
No, yeah. It's for the waiting room,
The waiting room. Okay, fantastic.
just for the
Yeah,
mood.
there you
How are you guys enjoying the party out there?
go. It's been great. It's really fun to be here. It's good energy in the room. Everyone's like relevant. Everyone's having some great conversations out here.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
cool. I'm sorry that we were not able to fly over to you guys next year.
Next time.
Man, it's worth
Nice,
it.
yeah.
I'm glad they talked me into it. It's good.
This is laying the groundwork.
That's right. It was a cold call. Closed on the cold call. It's actually true. You and Jalen called my ass.
Killing it. It's true.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, a lot of great speakers, a lot of information, a lot of content. I actually tuned in from the morning until now. I just opened up my laptop, put it on, and just listened the whole thing, So great stuff.
Who started this? How did we start? Is this? Sorry, yeah, I think we're good guys. We're good to talk, right? All right, so let's kick this off. Maybe we'll start with you, Michael, since you're the man over there. Talk about commissions. Where are we headed with bonuses and spiffs for SDRs? Is that going to be the path forward by incentivizing people? Are we on the carrots? Are we back on the sticks? A little bit of both.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So when I started my agency, I read this book. I will look up the name. I'll send everyone in the cloud test chat. So the book about building partnership companies like legal firms, financial firms, because obviously there's not a lot of stuff for the service agency owners, right? There's no books, there's no a lot of guidelines, etc. So I read that book and I was like, hey, can I build my company to be based on partnerships, so I can treat my SDRs, my account managers as equal partners that helping to build this business. And that sort of was the foundation of Belkins. And that was something that I was thinking about when I was building the compensation incentiveness for them. So I think that I will just kick this off that depending on where you are as an agency, I think you need to have different incentiveness depending on your life cycle, right? So at the early stage, it might be one type of incentiveness, and then on the more advanced stages, you might be looking at something else, right? When I started, the company, I obviously didn't have a lot of, I didn't have any cash, didn't have any shoulder financial one, and I obviously worked on incentiveness a lot. So it was probably 50-50 in a way, right? Then, and as I grew, obviously that 50%, incentiveness was a bit bitey for us, because then you kind of are still paying too high salaries, right? So you're just decreasing the commission percentage and then you're going up on the base. So I think that just, again, depending on where you are as the company, but I am a huge believer into revenue sharing model for anyone that is higher than head level, top manager, etc. I am a huge believer of a sort of a incentive in terms of commission for account managers, SDR, sales, everyone out there. And I also are a huge believer of the learning and development, where the person can increase their compensation or their incentiveness percentage depending on how they are in their organization and how much value they bring to on the table. So I'm gonna stop right here. Anyone agree with me here, or you guys are doing things differently?
I would agree that you have your way of doing, right? And it must be working because you guys are an awesome agency that's growing. I think for the most part, I would agree. I'm like, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, my opinion here is I think that the SDRs ultimately are going to roll up under marketing and operations and actually be more of a team-oriented approach. So I think more of a bonus structure based on team goals is probably going to be a more appropriate thing moving forward, because it's going to foster the teamwork. I think sales is just unfortunately moving in a direction where when I was growing up, it was give me a territory and get the fuck out of my way and give me as much of a bonus structure as you possibly can. And that motivated me. Unfortunately, I just don't see kids being motivated that much anymore by that type of direct compensation for very direct work. And I also think that it's gonna need to be more team oriented moving forward here, because the outbound work that the SDRs do obviously drives inbound in some way, shape, or form, and it's hard to make the attribution to that. So I think that's where like quarterly bonuses, those type of things, and you can have individual kind of metrics and compensation, but to me, I think it needs to move to more of a quarterly bonus type of scenario, or even monthly bonus, but it's more based on the team and how they work together and the result that they drive as the organization, as opposed to any individual rep.
Yeah, I would add to that in the world of an SDR agency, it might be better attached to the renewal of an account, right? But it might make sense to incentivize heavy on renewals, right, versus commissions. Because if you look at as an agency charges, you got rising inflation, you got buyers that want to spend less, you got teammates that want to earn more, and they're more likely to leave. They want more commission and they want to earn more. Their money's worth less as time goes on. So it's really, it puts businesses and agencies not really in a good place. And I think that's not the right way to incentivizing renewals, in the case of an agency, or hitting forecasts, hitting gross profit margins, net profit margins for company. And that would go align more with marketing, say. Well, are we hitting numbers?
So here's a hot take for you guys. I work with a lot of younger salespeople in San Francisco. So we have a team of 40. I have an agency that's 25 people and a tech startup that's 15. And okay, the world is so different for these kids now. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for meaning. They're looking for a war to fight. They're looking for a mountain to climb. They're looking for a castle to build. Like that's what they're looking for. People don't go to church anymore. People don't even go to the office anymore. Right. Like people go to, music festivals, drop Molly, like they're doing anything they can to feel togetherness and to feel like they're in this big shared experience together with their colleagues, their tribe. Yeah, exactly. So I've actually found I've gotten way more leverage out of positioning what people are doing as sort of working towards this big shared goal and then aligning incentives around that. It's easier with a startup because you get option packages and you get equity and all that stuff. With agencies, you can't really play with that quite as much. We've tried to find ways to give people, like the agency side of the business, we try to find ways to align incentives around milestones that are the same as what the startup would get. So if they can get to, like, our big thing is $1 million ARR. If they can get to $1 million ARR, that's like, it's a bonus. They get this huge stripe. They're going on the website. We're going to celebrate what they're doing. But we actually find those like less mechanical, less monetary things, to your point, actually go a lot further. People are just looking, they want to feel like they're part of a collective, a big thing. It's like a shared war that they're all fighting together. So we lean way hard into that, and I found it works way better than like the nitty gritty of like dollars for actions.
I agree with all of you guys. It makes total sense. I think I have this very similar experience because we have a SaaS platform, and for that SaaS platform, we actually don't give away options. We actually don't pay high salaries because we look up for people that are motivated for innovation, for
the mission.
They wanted to sort of like the mission. They wanted to put a tab on creating the best product in the industry, and this is their drive. And for them, you don't micromanage them. You don't sort of like work on HR meetings. You just give them the opportunity to kind of develop, and you just kind of walk through them. And obviously, a lot of people burn out, but those that go through the hustle, they are the best, right? I also agree with you in terms of like having that mission in the agency. Although when you grew to 300-400 people, you cannot have that.
It's hard, man. Yeah,
it's insane. Now, what Amir mentioned about having the team goal and generally just working towards the team. I'm kind of separating the internal SDRs or BDRs and then the outsourced SDRs, right? Because these are two different things, right? So when this is internal team, absolutely, we actually, everyone is tied into a sales KPI, not the marketing one. So when you generate deals that are not closing, it doesn't make sense, right? So the idea is that you should be bringing the new revenue to the organization. So the BDRs, they are connected to the quantitative and qualitative. So the quantitative might be, hey, you need to book X number of meetings with the deal score 3+ or 4+, whatever we are scoring, right? So then it means that we can have the volume. but then they also are incentive in terms of, hey, you can get 1% of the closed deal or 2% or whatever, right? So you know that they bring in this to the overall, and it works really well for everyone. Plus, they can get some additional incentiveness when they hit their volume or their quantity or quality of measurements every 3 months. So their base is growing. Or when they go to the senior SDR, their percentage is growing. So this kind of gamification works really well to increase the lifespan of an SDR within an organization, because we don't want them to be ramped up and then leave the company. We want them to stay and generate more and more value for the organization. Now, when it's an outsourced SDR, what we found working really well is like when you work with a client, and you guys all talked through that today, you always have this kind of expectation, and then when you put the number to that expectation, like, hey, how many appointments I need to drive to you for this to make sense? Is it 10? Is it 15? What's the cost? So that kind of KPI is not just for the customer or for the contract, it's also can be for the team to put the incentiveness on that. So in a way, what we've done, we've kind of we incentivize our SDRs to hit the targets on clients' behalf, and then the higher they hit the targets, the more commission they make based on the client subscription. So it means that the SDRs is interested in increasing the client monthly subscription as well as hitting the higher target to get the higher percentage of that. And that works really well if you can scale that. And right now we were able to kind of scale that, but obviously there's some challenges in that way, because you also need to time them to churn, you need to time them to upsells, you need to time them to outweigh. So there's a lot of different KPIs. So you need to be very nerdy and geek to kind of work with those tables like we are. But this is just the approach of like more like technical one.
So we've talked a lot about like ways we're structuring comp though, right? And how are we paying them more money? I'd love to hear how you guys are motivating your reps with like career development opportunities, room for advancement. So we just researched this. We surveyed 260 SDRs in the US. There are 600,000 SDRs in the US. So we have a margin of error of plus or minus 6%. So a pretty good sample. And we asked these SDRs to rank 7 different things that were important to them in employers. And the top 3 were max earning potential, opportunities for advancement, and then skills coaching and career development. Those came in above remote work. They came in above flexible hours. They came in above PTO and health insurance. So I think earlier we talked about how reps or SDRs aren't motivated by, hey, here's territory, go run with it. But I do still think that part of being part of something, that community, is feeling like your manager cares. Like they're investing in my career and I'm going to be better when I leave. So I'd love to hear how you guys are structuring your, talent development programs within your organizations and how that's impacted retention as well.
Yeah, we're huge on that. Like we're massive on that. And it pays huge dividends. Maybe it's specific to the younger cohorts, but that is worth more than dollars to almost all of them. Absolutely. Like if you're painting a path for them, like we always talk about us as like we're in the business of building businesses. And actually, if you're an agency working with early stage companies, you're not just building dollars. The dollars don't mean that much. What means a lot is the path to repeatable and scalable dollars. Like that's how you build any of the Fortune 500 companies have gone through that and they've figured that out, right? So we kind of talk like that. We're in the business of building businesses, and we're actually building muscles in these people that are worth vast amounts. Like they could go and be their client someday. They could be an entrepreneur. They could be a revenue leader. They could be all sorts of other things. And I get your point about how at a larger agency that might be tougher. So I don't have any answers there. I think you could potentially still use that ethos or that principle, but that's been paying huge dividends for us. It's just focusing on building skills, building muscle, getting exposure. We'll even go to the trouble of clarifying that. It's like, hey, why do you think a CRO can pull $300,000-$400,000 a year? It's because they have battle scars, and you're actually, without realizing it, getting crazy amounts of exposure to all sorts of different revenue scenarios, like revenue archetypes, like systems, CRMs, tools, all that stuff. It's the same type of thing that a good CRO would see and get instincts from. So we kind of we get very explicit about it, and it really fires people up.
And if you also just line up, like not just the external development, but also the internal opportunities to meet with the executives within the organization, like those type of spiffs go a long way too. It's like, oh, if you hit this, then you get to lunch with the CEO and you get to learn what it's like to be a CEO or CRO or whatever it is. And that's dependent on their track, right? Like what do they want to be and what is their bigger plan for themselves? Because you got to figure that out, right? And that's why it's an individualistic thing, which is why I think it always has to, right now specifically, I think people's comp plans should be tied to their interviewing plans of how they bring employees on these days, because the tide has shifted drastically.
Yeah.
And I think doing an assessment of what motivates individual people based on the type of company you want to build is actually probably the better way to build this, because then you're not reverse engineering everybody's shit. How do I motivate this individual person? They all line up with the values. They all line up and they all agree in the bigger purpose or whatever it is. And then you can start to do much more holistic type things as opposed to, individual, like trying to figure out how to motivate this kid versus that kid. So.
Just to add to it, I almost think that commissioning SDRs on appointments is what kills the industry, because I think the KPI of a meeting leads to the wrong customers, the wrong time of AEs, customers that churn, right? Some of the stuff that Raj talked about. If you listen to Andrew's approach, right? He's a San Francisco guy who I think he's sold before, right?
Yeah.
It's back to kind of what I mentioned about maybe making a shift to commissioning SDRs on gross profit, gross revenue, net profit, because those terms, sometimes SDRs don't even know what they mean, right?
Yeah,
and they're not aligned with the business objective. They don't actually, the reality is a lot of SDRs and a lot of us start as SDRs or salespeople to become business owners to exit. So it's a career path to become a CEO and a leader, right? We don't talk about that often, right? We say, hey, you want to be an SDR to be an AE? Well, what about being an SDR to be an AE to be a CEO, right? So
everyone wants to be a founder now. So
Yeah, I
give them a path to being a founder.
Or a YouTube star.
I think
that
the
people
path
just
moving
want to
forward
take ownership.
is explaining them why renewals matter, right? Because if you're incentivizing meetings, you're just incentivizing bad behavior, right? Because like back to the closing rate, 20% conversion rate versus 7% conversion rate. So if the guy makes the most commission, did he really make the most revenue with the company? Probably not.
But there's also a progression. Like my philosophy is you gotta figure out whether an SDR can even put in the work at first, right? So I think compensating on quantity over quality up front to say, hit the fucking numbers, hit them, make the dials, get the meetings, and give them shit leads, you know what I mean? Not like the best ones, whatever, and get them so that they can actually, like, can you put in the work? Because that's one thing I can't train. I can't train effort. I can't train passion. So I got to test that first. And then you earn the right to then get better leads and reduce your volume, go higher quality. And then I can stage it out, because now you're just getting a meeting. And then I can do like an SDR 1, 2, 3 level, where SDR 1s, you get the meeting based on basic demographic, qualification shit. SDR 2, you graduate, you go further down the discovery stage. So you actually have deeper conversations and you compensate more. SDR 3, you go further down and then you sit in on the demo, for instance, with the AE. Right. So you're graduating through the process so they understand. And I think you can put a stage group there. So
I know, I agree with that. And I at the same time, I look at a go-to-market plan almost the same way as a financial plan, right? A lot of it has math behind it that we don't talk about, right? And when he's talking about hitting the phones and numbers, these become things that you can overlay onto a forecast and you can see the math of it, right? So it's not just willingness, right? Like you could tie that back to like, hey, I'm training you not only to be an SDR, but to eventually be a business owner.
Yep.
And
here's the math.
Yeah, you're doing 100 phone calls, 100 sit-ups, the same way as bringing 100 customers, knowing 10% churn. Yep. There's a lot of similarities to that math. We don't tie it together. And if we just focus on the commissions, we're kind of doing them a disjustice because they're just kind of like, well, what am I doing this for? Commissions, and that's great. But if they really understand where it's coming from, I think there'd be better outcomes, right? And a lot of times we don't talk about the fact that sometimes people take that clout just to jump from one job to the next, right? Like we talk about the fact that SDRs, typical 10 years, 12 months, most of them make it. Well, we don't talk often about like, do they know that? They probably know that more than we know that. They're probably looking at the SDR group report. They're probably like, oh my God, I'm month 8 in. I'm already looking for a new job, right? So like, we don't ever ask these people. How often we ask SDRs like, hey, do you know how long the average job is here? Which we don't know what they're thinking. They could be thinking, I want to milk as many meetings as possible. Yeah. Book out, right? And so it's like, I think we have a time. I really got opportunity to slow things down.
Hope so.
And strike a few chords that I think individual millennials want, or to feel part of something coming forward, but not doing it in a way of just like we're just appeasing your feelings, tying it to like the business. Right?
The output's gotta be there. Yeah, the output's gotta be there. But we celebrate media. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask, like, if we're talking about compensating SDRs though on renewals, retention for a position that's so short tenure, is that even feasible? I mean, if a rep comes on and they're 9 months, how much of that renewal every quarter really is on them? And is it fair to compensate them Or if I show up and the program churns, but I showed up 2 months ago, is that my problem that this churned? And are you just going to then push people out of the org? Because I'm here booking meetings, but my team is sandbagging. And now I'm not getting my renewal bonus because I just showed up. Like, are you going to end up doing yourself, especially in the agency business, a disservice? And are people going to leave faster because their compensation is now being distributed across the team?
9 months, then you failed at selling them on.
I think you want to lead fast, but not the right people, right? Like, this is a way of weeding people out. It's kind of like what Raj talked about offering $5,000 up front to see if they're committed and having a higher conversion rate. You might have more people drop out fast, but is it better to have an SDR drop out in week 2 or after 9 months of taking your training? And
depends on how good the SDR is, right?
John mentioned a good point. John mentioned a good point about having some tiers of SDRs. So we don't necessarily need to motivate each SDR the same way, right? So if we want to give them some hustle and you wanted to show them that they actually can do can put work, then you don't necessarily need to put them commission up front, right? They can put the work, they can do the task, they can hustle. Then on the 3rd month, they can do the next level of SDRs where they can get additional incentiveness. Then next 9 months. So in this way, you can prolong the time of the organization because you always open up. So I think that our generation liked a lot of gamification. We like to see new things because we are very bored. So it's like, I get everything, I'm bored, what's next for me? So my next level. So I like levels, right? So Jay, by gamification. So a nerdy example, you can build a table S1, S8 when you can put a certain time frame in terms of what needs to be done to go from one to another. You put like the juniors are S1, S3, then you have middles, then you have seniors, and then you put some kind of different hard skill and soft skills that needs to be done or the KPI to be achieved. And then you tie that to the compensation, and then you put the mentorship, you put the training, you put some other things, additional tasks, and you just show this and then lead every SDRs through that journey so then they can grow professionally, they can grow financially, and then you alleviated the risk for your organization because each level you can also control in terms of how many senior SDRs you need per organization, how many juniors you need per organization, et cetera, as like mathematical model, right? But then also just to your point, I feel like people, and the reason I opened my company was that the previous founder that I worked for, I opened office, I closed office, I hustled, but he didn't give me an opportunity to take ownership of the product as if this is my company, not on the paper, but just to have a feeling of this is my organization. So I think that what I wanted to do for my people is whenever they enter the company, I always say, guys, this is your company, this is your generation, don't fuck this up and let's build these things together. So they have the feeling that, okay, this is now my life, my project. I wanted to make the best of it. And I see that everyone appreciate that and everyone is equal with me. So there's no like owner, there's no like an SDR, there's everyone that just built this thing with their equal responsibility, just in a different area. And I think that if this is the mentality of an agency, you can have, but again, obviously hire only great people, right? So you cannot.
We're 2 minutes over. But
so one of the ways that we are looking at is essentially the personalization. I think in many ways, when it comes to coaching and training, we emphasize a lot on personalizing the coaching and training because no one individual has the same level of aspiration or motivation. So different people respond to different motivations and aspirations. So one thing that we are experimenting is just the way we look at personalization of training and coaching, can we also look at some degree the personalization of incentive plan as well? What I mean by that is, let's say some of them may be extremely passionate about a passion project. So you give them X number of hours dedicated to pursue the passion project, irrespective of the outcome. And you enable them, empower them to indulge in that passion project. So that really, drives them. The other thing that we've seen is some people want to be paid vacation for a whole month and stay away from the work altogether, and then they can go travel wherever they want, purely funded by the organization. That could be one massive experience for them. So what we are looking at is, rather than just assigning a dollar number to performance, we want to assign aspiration and motivation of an individual to a passion project or to a vacation of choice, or maybe a certain level of recognition. So we are experimenting. and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I guess a personalization of incentive could also be a great way to look at.
That's a big point, guys. We're a little bit over, but I'm going to close it with this because, and I don't want to sound cheesy when I say this, but anybody listening to this, we kind of had a two duality where we talk about SDRs that could be working directly for companies and SDRs for agencies, right? But if you really think about it, if it's this complex for agency leaders like ourselves, it's back to what John has been saying. This function should roll up to marketing more. It should be agencies should be worked with more. SDRs should be career SDRs that work at agencies and really actually become. What's the difference between a demand gen guy and an SDR? Maybe we'll get back to actually driving traffic to websites, MQLs, and calling back as it should be, right?
BDRs are in marketing.
And you know what? Instead of hiring SDRs internally at 3 different levels of NAEs, maybe just hire a junior AE and a senior AE and coach them better. Top of the but that's we're gonna get kicked off, guys. But I think it's complex, and I think the big thing here is that there's no right or wrong answer. But I think being in tune with your SDRs is something that you either should do or not have them at all. Right? I think we all agree with that.
But that's make it so fun, right? It's so different.
I love the gamification. I agree with you there.
Mad about that.
I think the way we look at is, for example, getting revenue to the company is everybody's business. So while different people take different responsibilities and KPIs to get the revenue on board, but I believe it is everybody's business to get revenue, especially if you're in the marketing team, if you're in the, of course, the AE, if you're an SDR, even if you're in customer success and support, because you all have a direct exposure to customers in some way or the other. So I believe
that's a whole different roundtable. We need to get rid of marketing and sales. Just call it revenue department, guys.
No,
I appreciate everybody for being here. We are gonna have our last keynote. I hope that you guys can join us in Medellin next time. I know it's late where you're at, so I appreciate you being on. I know. Yeah. What time is it there? 10 o'clock at night. So thank you for tuning in. Anything else to add, guys? Before we
it's great to meet you guys. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys. Have fun.
Thank you.
Okay.